Hey, and it took faster, went quicker than I thought. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning into the BAF podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lafferty, and we're here to talk about a new Savage Worlds setting that my gaming company, Fading Goat Games, is putting out in association with Jade Monkey Press called The After. And if you're looking at YouTube, you can see a picture of a grim-looking mountain man with glowing eyes riding a horse. It's I described this on Reddit to someone the other day as it's sort of like if Jeremiah Johnson and Mad Max had a baby and Alien Nation was the nanny.
Yeah,
Sean, would you agree with that?
I agree with all that, but the Alien Nation's a little bit cheesy.
Well, that's kind of my brand, but yeah, I feel you. We're going for more of a frontier survival sort of feeling than your average post-apocalyptic setting.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but John, since you're up, let me introduce everybody. Jon Gibbons is here. He's a great artist. He's the creator of this setting. How you doing, John?
I'm all right.
Sean Nokes is here. Sean Nokes is the author we have for The After. How you doing, Sean?
Hey, I'm doing well.
How is life in Oh, thanks for being here. How's life in Indiana today?
Oh, the weather's beautiful. Everything is quiet. The race is over, and all of the foreigners have left my city. Everyone can go back to the other parts of the U.S. Until next year.
It's always a nice feeling when the race is over and all the tourists leave.
So. Well, I live on the side of town where the racetrack is, too. So basically on race day, I'm not going anywhere.
No, I used to live in Speedway, too.
Right.
I remember exactly what that was like. So, yeah, cool. So, John, you've been working on The After for a couple of years now. And before I go any further, let me mention that if you go to Kickstarter right now and you do a search for Post-Apocalyptic and The After, will be the first thing that comes up. We got 25 more days on Kickstarter, and we're about 78% funded. Anyway, John, you've been working on this for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And tell us what kind of inspired you to come up with The After.
Okay, so I'm a big fan of post-apocalyptic games. So in the past, I've played the usual suspects, your Aftermath, your Twilight 2000s, all those kind of things. But I'm also quite a big fan of the American West and that frontier kind of spirit. And I wanted to try and mix the two without going the obvious route of kind of the Wild West, which has been done obviously by Deadlands. So I thought, let's have a look at more of kind of like a frontiersman type setting. So rather than your sort of Wild West, think more of kind of like the Revenant, that kind of era, pre-industrial. And then, of course, it was a case of just trying to figure out what it was that caused this post-apocalyptic setting. So normally you've got your Third World War or your zombie apocalypse or your bubonic plagues or whatever. But I thought something a little bit different. But I wanted something which has happened, is over, but has left it a mark in a large way. So it was kind of like, okay, let's have a think. And I came up with the idea of this brutal alien invasion, which has sort of destroyed most of the sort of civilization of mankind. All the largely populated areas of the world have now gone. So the only survivors were those people who ran to the hills, literally. And it's now nearly a century after. There was two alien species having a major war with each other and using the Earth as their battleground. We were just like ants on an anthill. Anyway, these aliens have now left, and the survivors are now sort of crawling out of their caves and their sort of mountain retreats and woodland retreats and trying to forge a new life for themselves. And they discovered that the world is changed. Of course, it's now more pre-industrial. Society's fallen. There's no big cities and big establishments left. And also the aliens have left other things behind, which is a big part of what The After is all about. That's about it.
All right, cool. And we chose Savage Worlds for this because that kind of, maybe we can go back to Deadlands roots a little bit, but we don't want to push that too much. But that kind of quick, fast, sort of less dare we say savage, feel on the tabletop is sort of what we were looking at. And Sean, you're kind of our Savage Worlds czar, guru. Witch doctor, if you will. We kind of brought you in for your system expertise as well as your lyrical turn of phrase. And, really appreciate you've done a yeoman's work on the Savage manuscript. We really appreciate that. Can you talk a little bit about what that's been like, kind of fleshing out Jon's ideas and bringing it to life?
Yeah. John's art was really evocative. It gave me a great starting point for where to take this. And one of the things I liked the most about the setting is that it wasn't your standard post-apocalyptic game where everything was all grimdark and full of smoke and all the water had turned to poison and nobody had anything to eat. And it, in a lot of post-apocalyptic settings, it's just all the time terrible. And the After turns that on its head a lot in the fact that, well, most of the people are gone and things in the world are pretty messed up. But in general, the sun shines, the rain falls, there's enough to eat. There are issues of scarcity and issues of safety and big issues of what human society is going to turn into amongst the survivors. In that some post-apocalyptic settings really want to hang on to the kind of the existing American structure, if you will, of cities, towns, and government. But in the After, humanity's been pared down so much that it's really gone down to the bare minimum. A bunch of people and a big library of books trying to remake humanity as best they can. And I thought that was very exciting. It's been a lot of fun to write so far.
I guess we should mention that the big library of books is in the one of the central locations in the setting is called, appropriately enough, Chapter, a little settlement in survivors camp in Wyoming, where you better explain this for me. Set that up for the listeners, please.
Well, we are in the main book. We're operating under a setting called the Wind River Valley, which is a real world place in the northwestern United States. Isn't that around Montana and Wyoming, John?
Yeah, just northwestern parts of Wyoming. Yeah,
right. So we envisioned the fact that these alien invaders were really, really thorough in exterminating people, but people are resilient. And in the case of these particular people in the Wind River Valley, there were several hundred survivors that locked themselves down into underground mountain vaults, and they happened to have basically a full library's worth of books with them, which in a world after all of this, in the After, where technology is not reliable and there are a bunch of weird alien creatures on the loose, strange field tribesmen, and all kinds of spookiness, it was these books that allowed the survivors, once they deemed it safe, it allowed them to rebuild society as best they could. And their discovery is that a lot of the high technology, if you will, doesn't work right. It's been messed up in strange ways by things the aliens have done to our biosphere. But the frontier level of technology, steam tech, really basic light bulbs, that kind of thing, they were able to come out, use the knowledge in the books, and start rebuilding right away. So the city of Chapter is a safe place at the center of all this, where people are strong and prosperous. There's new building, there's food, there's safety in numbers, and there's organization. And the interesting place that the heroes take in this is because there are so few people in the Wind River Valley, the player characters in a game of the After are going to be important. Just because, in Savage Worlds terms, they're wild cards. They have a lot more going for them than your average person in a Savage Worlds game, an average NPC, if you will. So just by virtue of being who they are going to get to decide the direction of Chapter, the direction of the various factions within Chapter. There are a lot of social pressures forward and back about whether Chapter is going to become a dictatorship and start capturing other city-states, whether they're going to be the shining beacon on the hill and offer free knowledge to everyone. There are factions that believe the aliens are returning and that being on the surface and rebuilding is wrong and everything should be knocked down and people should remain in the caves. And it will be up to the players to interact with all of these people and decide whether, peace can be made, whether compromises can be made, and to become leaders in their own right.
So it's a world that needs heroes, and that's the niche the players are filling.
Right, which is a really great vibe for Savage Worlds. I think it's a really fun system to incorporate this in.
Yeah, I think to jump on that, which from Sean, it's the world is such an empty place in regards to humanity now. So the reason why we chose Wyoming was because basically when I did a quick Google search of the least populated areas in the United States. Wyoming popped up as one of the big ones. It's one of the least populated states. Yeah, we could have set it in one of the southern states or Arizona, but then again, it becomes too much like your typical post-apocalyptic settings. Everything's dust, everything's sand, everything's arid with lots of cacti about, but I didn't really want that Mad Max feel. So setting it in Wyoming, which is beautiful mountain countryside, brutal winters where the landscape turns white, but lovely summers and these rolling plains, is an unusual place to set it. And because it was very unpopulated area anyway, that's the reason why it was left alone by the alien races. But also, like Sean says, as heroes now, there's not many survivors who are going to be leaving these safe places and traveling to explore. Chapter's a unique place. It's slowly being built up from the caves where the people were hiding out, and like Sean says, it's now a township. And there are other settlements dotted around, but those tend to be a lot smaller places with maybe 50 to 100 people in. So your player characters are the few people who are going to be leaving Chapter, wandering around, visiting the settlements, exploring the world, visiting these strange breach zones and these and pre-war sites to find stuff. So yeah, it's quite exciting for them, I would have thought.
Let's talk about the breach zones a little bit. There's a whole aspect of the game where there are some explorers out in the wastelands who hit these breach zones, which are kind of like I guess this is kind of an esoteric reference, but in France they still have the red zone, which are places that are so polluted after World War I.
Yeah.
Nothing grows there anymore. No one goes there anymore. There's still unexploded ordnance, and these are kind of that idea, but from a weird alien war that was fought on Earth. That just places that are fundamentally. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, one of the alien races that was in the battle are called the Ghosts. And we call them the Ghosts. We call the other alien race the Butchers. That's not their real name. But basically, what people need to understand there was no communication between mankind and these alien races. It wasn't a case of the alien races turned up and then we tried to talk to them and they answered back. There wasn't even like we're here to destroy you. They just turned up and did their business. So very little is known about those alien races, and now they've gone. But stuff they've left behind has got its own effects. The Ghosts were dimensional travelers. Their technology came from like the quantum level. They travel through dimensions. So whenever they use their energies, or for example, there might have been a battle and one of their ships might have crashed, or who knows what happened, but they left pockets of their energy behind. And these pockets, some have formed into what are known as breach zones. So you've got these small dimensional anomalies. It could be anything, it could be an area that's, say, literally just the size of a house, or it could be like some of our breach zones, an area that covers miles of the landscape. And these are going to be really interesting places because the laws of physics might be upside down. You might find yourself, for example, literally stepping into an Arctic world or a desert type experience, or a place we call Shadow, which is perpetual darkness. So, you've got these very eerie, off-putting places, but obviously explorers are going to want to go in there to try and gather what could be left behind.
And that's those are kind of a nod to an old science fiction story we talked about, Roadside Picnic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Roadside Picnic, which is a Russian novel, you can buy it. It's translated into English, but to tell the truth, the translation I struggle with. It's not the best in the world. But that basically, the story behind that is that there were some kind of visitors, again, some kind of weird aliens turned up. They didn't stay around very long. They disappeared. But where they appeared, they left these zones, and people go in there to look for objects that have been changed or have been left behind by these creatures or these dimensional beings. But they are very odd places, very dangerous, and you kind of like banned to go in there. But it's also very similar to there's a book out and that was made into a film called Annihilation. You might have seen that. I think it was out last year. And that is a very similar feel where you've got this strange zone and people go in there and who knows what you can expect. So we've got a lot of these zones planned for the book. Hopefully if the funding for the Kickstarter goes well, and we can hit some stretch goals. We can further expand on them and make sure we've got some nice maps and nice details and some one sheets potentially to be used in these zones.
Cool. And I know we touched on that a little bit. We had a quick start you can get on RPG Now. One of the bandits had one of the remnants from one of the breach zones. I believe he had something called Pogo's Mantle.
He did, yeah. So remnants again are the name that's put forward for any kind of object or device that's been left behind by the aliens. So you get two forms of remnants. You've got butcher remnants, obviously items left by the butchers, and ghost remnants, items left by the goats. Both vastly different. Butcher remnants tend to be quite brutal, biomechanical, strange devices that you can fuse into your body, while ghost remnants are more eerie, strange, dimensional energy type devices. Butcher devices can be quite straightforward. You pick something up, it looks like some kind of bizarre insect-like weaponoid arm. It's quite apparent what that does. You graft it onto your arm, hey presto, there you go, although it's not necessarily the best thing you should do for your character. While the ghost remnants are a bit more strange because it might be a crystal or a part of their machines. You don't know what they do, but they provide unusual abilities, and it's up to the player to discover what they are. But yeah, that's quite an interesting part of the setting.
Okay. Can we touch? I mean, I talked on the Kickstarter and some other places I've been talking about it. I get a lot of people asking, well, how is this different from Rifts or Savage Worlds? How is it different from Hell on Earth? How would you guys, Sean and John, address that question?
Sean, do you want to take over, mate? Or?
Yeah, I can take over this one. I've had experience on the tabletop playing both Rifts and Hell on Earth, and the After really occupies a niche that neither of them quite go for. Hell on Earth is really focused on the horror aspect of it. There's a big supernatural element in Hell on Earth. The four horsemen are riding. If you leave a dead body too long, it will turn into a zombie. Everything's basically horrible all the time in Deadlands Hell on Earth. They've got a big Mad Max feel, and just everything's irradiated and horrific and bad. And that is not really where the After goes. If you roll back the After timeline about 50 years, yeah, that all happened.
Yeah.
But it's over now, and we're in the time period after that where things are becoming better. And then Rifts is really a strange animal. I mean, obviously that's one of the game systems and game worlds that's been around for decades at this point, and they seem to pride themselves on a very gonzo kitchen sink approach. The Savage Worlds Rifts project is pretty neat, but they really go out of their way to let you play a dragon next to an anime mech suit pilot, next to a two-headed mutant guy, next to an elven wizard.
I agree with that, and that's because obviously Rifts, the similarity between Rifts and us is you've got these strange dimensional portals, but the big difference is Rifts are there because that's where people come from. That's where the players come from.
Right.
Rifts is design, isn't it? Where you, like you say, you can have a party of a robot, a superhero, a giant from a frost giant, or whatever. It's this bizarre setup, and it's all designed for that. While ours is definitely not. Our dimensions and our breach zones are places to explore, places where you can find things out and look and discover new things, etc. And like you say, with Hell on Earth, it's the Weird West, isn't it? Hell on Earth is definitely the Weird West. We're not the Weird West. Yeah, okay, it's set in America. Yes, okay, it's got a slight westerny flavor because people have resorted back to using horses, etc. But that's about it, really. It's ours is more like this frontier style rather than a Wild West style, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be able to find echoes of similarities if you look. Of course you are. But I would argue that it really does occupy a different place than either of those games.
Yeah.
And you can't play a dragon or an elf in our setting as you could in Rifts.
But you know something though. It's funny because the idea is someone could pick up the After, and a GM could run the After, and it's up to them. If they could turn around and say, I'm going to create a breach zone, a dimensional breach zone that for some bizarre reason tap back into some kind of alien world where you've got dragons. Yeah, and if someone were to create that breach zone and a bunch of our explorers went in there and faced dragons, that's perfectly reasonable. It's up to the GM. That is a potential that each GM could do.
Yeah, and while you can't play an elf or a dragon in the book we're writing, there are some options to play things other than a regular boring old human, if that's what you're inclined.
Yeah.
There are a couple of servitor races that were kind of hitchhiked in when the butchers invaded, and some of the survivors of those races have set up shop in the Wind River Valley. They're not inherently hostile, and you can play them as player characters. In addition, there are people that have been touched by the breach energy to the point where their genes have been warped. We call them the Changed. They're very, very different people. You saw that with the illustration of the guy with the third eye. What's that about? What's going on with his hand? What kind of powers does he have? You could play a guy like that if you wanted to. And like John said, I will give the caveat that since we wrote this in Savage Worlds, if you really want to mix this with elves and dragons, you can. There's a lot of Savage Worlds products out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and the other thing as well to touch on is the fact is, I know we touched on Hellots you can play, and the Scabs are 2 playable races, plus the Change, the character you're looking at there, which is almost like your typical mutant. But also there is a unique kind of like power stroke magic system which we haven't touched on yet, and that's the dimensional energies and the ghosts touch certain people, which has been passed down for the genetics and open up their minds. And these people are known as gifted. And if you're gifted, you possess powers known as the boon, and they, that can become apparent. And there is kind of like a magic system as such inside the book.
Now we don't really call it a magic system though, right? It's more
it's
weird alien stuff, mutations, or how would you characterize it?
No, really, because we basically split it over 3 different types of arcane backgrounds, didn't we, Sean? So basically we said that you had the mind benders, which are basically almost like your powers of the mind and into ESP and that kind of stuff and telekinesis. Then you've got the breach runners almost, which is so they're the ones who actually tap into these almost like the physical essence of dimensional energy, which they get their hands on. And those kind of characters, their abilities do manifest in quite apparent ways. So it's quite feasible for someone to produce a swirling ball of cold which they throw at someone to attack them. So yeah, in those extent it can look quite magical, when they're tapping into these energies.
Hey guys, I have to take care of my kid for a second. Can you get a conversation without me for about 90 seconds?
Yeah,
right.
I can talk about the other arcane background, which is the Flesh Crafters, which is people that have tapped more into the kind of weird mutant side of it, if you will, where they can induce temporary mutations on themselves or on others. So that's how their arcane powers might manifest. And in Savage Worlds terms, we use the term arcane background because that's what the game system is.
Yeah, of course we did, yeah.
But even where, like, all 3 of the arcane backgrounds have, for example, the bolt power. But with a breach runner, they might actually reach into a glowing rift and hurl balls of energy at you. Whereas the Flesh Crafter might be shooting some kind of spine that spontaneously erupts out of his flesh at you, right?
Yeah.
Or spitting poison or something like that. So you can really, we've put advice in the book on how you can flavor each of the arcane backgrounds to really make them different from one another.
Okay, cool. So it's not magic, but arcane. Maybe that's a better way to describe it.
Yeah. It's not magic. It's basically just. I mean, what did they say about technology? Technology, people haven't got it. Is a form of magic, isn't it?
It's sufficiently advanced technology. Yeah,
that's it. It's all like so. Advanced technology, dimensional portals, bestowing abilities, reaching into something and controlling that. Who knows? But yeah, I suppose it's not magic, but it's powers. It's definitely powers.
Okay. So we have been on Kickstarter for 5 days, and we're about 80% funded.
Yep.
So we're looking at some, I think our first 2 stretch goals, we're talking about art explosions, I think, for both of them. Can you talk about those, John?
Yeah. So I briefly touched first off about the expanding the gazetteer section, and it'd be nice if we could add more artwork, more maps, more background aspects into some of those settlements. So basically, the first stretch goal on the Kickstarter is for us to expand 3 of the settlements within the book. We do have a map in play. We're going to be expanding on the current map. That map indicates breach zones in existence, pre-war areas for exploration, and also settlements. The idea is that we're going to give the backers the option to select 3 of those by doing a poll, and those 3 will get the full works if we hit the stretch goal. So there'll be more artwork, there'll be more maps, more writing, etc.
Now this is the map right here, right?
Yeah. Can I just say that's basically just the concept of the map. Really must for the team to be able to look and see where things are. But you can see there's a number of settlements there, which are the ones in black. You've got the breach zones, which are kind of like the star-shaped icons, and then pre-war sites like Old Lander, which is Lander's obviously a small town in Wyoming, Casey and Buffalo. These are all locations if you are from that area, and it's funny enough because a couple of our backers are from that area or know it quite well, and they've actually been talking to me about certain areas which they've hiked through and got good suggestions really what we can put in those areas really. So that's been quite handy. But yeah, the first stretch goal is going to be an expansion of 3 of those areas, and we'll give the backers a chance to tell us which ones they want to expand, which I thought should be quite good fun. Keep us on our toes. The second stretch goal, we've only got 2 down currently because obviously we don't want to run ahead of ourselves. It would be nice to hit them. Is an art explosion stretch goal to be able to put down some more illustration for the bestiary. Sean's written a good size chapter of the book, which will incorporate new creatures and critters and bad guys to sort of face. Every setting book does need a nice bestiary. So with the art expansion, we can illustrate each of those creatures and give them a nice image for the GM to share. I think the stretch goal after that, again, if we're lucky enough to do so, I think we're going to probably go for maybe a word count stretch goal. Try to increase the word count some, throw some more details to some of the chapters, flesh out the book a bit more. That'd be really handy.
Cool. Yeah, looking forward to hopefully knocking some of those out.
Yeah.
And I guess we should mention we have a Kickstarter, a QuickStart that's available on RPG Now right now. If you're a drive-through RPG, if you go there and search for the After Savage Worlds, will be the first thing that comes up.
Yeah.
And we've gotten a great response on that. We'd love to hear anything else people think about it, but so far the response has been overwhelmingly.
It is. And one thing I want to make sure is that I want the Kickstarter campaign to be really like a 2-way street between us as a team and also backers. Lots of ideas going back and forth. We'll be sharing some ideas on the actual Kickstarter and looking for feedback. That's what we want really. We want to see what people want. Go on.
No, I was going to say we just did one recently. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do with naming some of the
Remnants. So it was the Remnants, because Remnants are such unique objects. I mean, they might just be one of a kind, and they're very, very rare. So it was kind of like, well, how do you name them in the book? So we had our own ideas, and I know, Sean and you, Mike, you've actually come up with some Remnants ideas, and it was kind of, what do we call them? And it's kind of like, things that some are very obvious, but if you find, say, like a strange looking green crystal that has a small power to it, what would you call that? And I thought, well, would the explorer who found it name it? So how would you name it in a book? Well, should this be it was very difficult choice. But anyway, we've had some good feedback from the backers. So I think from what the feedback we've had, I think we need to go back to our notes and sort of make some name changes, to tell the truth.
Yeah, I know when I was writing up the ones I've got so far, I was thinking along, if you got a small culture, and all the breach runners and explorers who go in there probably are familiar with each other, at least by name.
Yeah.
So, if you get a certain kind of thing, maybe you call that, like the one that we use in the QuickStart, Pogo's Mantle.
Yeah.
I just figured, well, maybe some guy named, nickname of Pogo, maybe he found that one day, and that was that kind of thing. Used to do a lot of spelunking when I was younger, and sometimes there's formations in a cave you'll come across, and it's named the Grand Chandelier or the Piano Room, or sometimes it's just called George's Lament. And there's probably a story there, but you never really quite hear the whole thing. So
That's it.
Yeah, I've got something about that. The ghost remnants a lot of times are more transient. They don't always stick around real long. You use them up, they eventually go away, they degrade. The butcher remnants are interesting in that, like John said, a lot of them are these weird biomechanical implants, chunks of flesh with wires and LEDs and weird mechanical parts through them that should be dead but aren't. That you can implant into the bodies of you or your friends, or maybe people you don't like that much. But the important thing is that those are a little more persistent, and you do pay a price for having them implanted in you. But one of the reasons they have names is maybe they're named after someone who previously owned them or wore them, and they met their downfall. And maybe Pogo's mantle was once part of a man named Pogo.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got that up on the display right now.
Yeah. Why would you want to put that on your body? But then again,
Well, sometimes I walk around downtown Boulder and ask myself the same question. I see a dude's with, gauges in your ear. I'm cool. Gauges in your lip. Oh man, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
But it's people, especially if you're in a survival environment, you're looking for any edge that you can.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I think it's these objects, these remnants, are going to be things which the players are going to want to get their hands on. But the GM has to make sure that he informs the players, and he's pushing the players to realize how rare and dangerous they are.
It's not a +2 longsword.
No, that's it. So like Sean said, if you find a butcher remnant and you decide that you want to start having its abilities, then, you're going to pay the price in blood. That's one of the terms that we used originally. There's going to be something it's going to get you back somehow. While the ghost ones tend not to be as brutal or as dangerous to an individual, but like Sean said, they might literally only last a few days, or they might have limited charges, or the power might go and the power might come back after a week or two, so they're more fleeting. But they're not just objects to be picked up. I mean, the key is, as well, is that, for example, there are remnants out there which are not for an individual but could be used by a community. So you might discover some kind of device, it might be a large object, which if you can get it back to a community, and someone there who's got the knowledge and to be able to do it, might be able to use that remnant to provide power to the community. Or it might be something which, for example, provides a shield from attack, or or purifies water, or I don't know, whatever, but we will be touching on some of those, and we tend to expand the remnant section quite a bit.
Cool. Well, we're getting towards the top of the hour. We're going to wrap things up here shortly. Do we have any closing thoughts?
Just please spread the word. Head over to the Kickstarter. Read the updates. If you like what you see, please pledge on it. Some of the higher level pledge levels have gone already. There was a high level pledge level, which was basically for me to do a individual character art commission for a person. I added 5 of those at the most, really, due to the amount of work it takes, and already 4 of the 5 have gone. So that they've really moved fast.
Oh wow! I didn't realize that.
Yeah, 4 out of 5, I know. So there's also a pledge level before that, which you can bag some nice art prints. So there's some 11 by 17 inch full color signed limited edition art prints, which you can get your hands on. So yeah, head over. If it's not for you, or you don't want to back it, then just please share the word. That's all we can ask.
Sean, how about you? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah. I wanted to say thank you to everybody that's looked at our Kickstarter, whether they've backed or whether they haven't. I'm so excited to see a community building around the after. It really makes my day every time I go look at the page. I can't wait to get this thing finished and get it in the hands of the folks that want it. I would love you to spread the word, like John said. I'd also love to hear your feedback. Whether it's through the Kickstarter page or elsewhere. Positive or negative feedback. If you didn't decide to back, tell us what turned you off.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know that we can change our tack, but I'd still like to know.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you have questions about the setting, I will be at Gen Con this year. If you want to get together and look me up, there are a couple tables of the after. Right now they are sold out, but there may be room for people with generic tickets. You never know. But if you have questions, I am also available on Twitter at Unbinder.
I
Hit me up.
didn't know you were on Twitter.
Yeah, surprise.
I had no idea. Okay.
That's the one thing where I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Facebook and do a lot of Facebook, but Twitter's just always eluded me.
You know, sometimes I'm feeling pretty good about myself and humanity in general, John. And I need to blunt the edge of that, high tide. So I'll go on Twitter, and after an hour, I'm like, okay, that's the cynical outlook I need on life.
Yeah, I get that feeling. It's kind of like I'm on Instagram, which is basically where I just literally throw up some artwork occasionally. That's just flashing off pictures. But Twitter's just never really done it for me. Facebook's okay. You just got to be Facebook. You just got to just flick through things. If you don't like it, carry on moving, carry on going, as they say. Avoid all the politics on Facebook. Yeah.
That's kind of my approach to Facebook too. I'll post gaming stuff or pictures of my kids or landscapes, and every once in a while someone has a political post of one flavor or another, and I'm like, I should chime in, and then there's a sane part of me that goes, no.
Yeah, don't do it. I'm exactly the same. It's so tempting at times. You go, no, I'm not going to go down that route.
All right, guys. Well, hey, let's wrap it up. Sean, John, really appreciate you guys' time today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been great.
Thanks,
yeah. Sean, you still there?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Hey, I just followed you on Twitter. Please don't block me. To all of our listeners, please check out the After. Like I say, go to Kickstarter, do a quick search for the After Savage Worlds or the After Post-Apocalypse, and we will come up. And we're running for 25 more days, so I'm sure we'll talk about it some more. So thanks for your time, and we will catch you next time on the BAMF Podcast.